Welcome back to 20 Something Survival Guide. If you're new here, I'm your host, Darren Alexis, and on this podcast, we talk about all things surviving and thriving in your 20s. Today was a highly requested topic, and I can't wait to get into it with my bestie, Master Thrifter, and Gemini Queen, Kelsey Noland. Kelsey has lived with her partner for like what, 7 years now? Has it been more?
It's been about I feel 7 years. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. You've been living together since high school, pretty much, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Like staying at each other's houses. And then recently, 2 years ago, we actually bought a house together officially.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll talk about all of that. But before we get into the questions, is there anything else you wanted to add to your intro, Kels?
I don't think so. I'm just really excited to be here and to be able to educate people in their 20s and 30s, about everything that it's like to live with a partner.
Yeah, definitely. I don't even know if we can educate, but we'll be bouncing ideas and stories off each other today, that's for sure. Well, shout out to you for coming on because we are going to get real. We are going to get raw. So grab your emotional support water bottles. I got mine. And let's dig in. As many of you know, I have unfortunately already lived with a boyfriend before, and that did not work out so great. Living with a straight man is so difficult. I'm not going to play it like it's easy. The cleaning habits, the different sleep schedules, how quickly food disappears from your fridge, like having to slightly de-girlify your apartment. There's just so many things. So the times have definitely changed. And I still know a ton of people that don't really believe in living with your partner. So I figured we could chat about that first. So, Kelsey, what are your opinions on living with someone before getting married? Obviously, I already know that you have, but why don't you just, expand upon that?
Of course. So, in my opinion, I think it's super important to live with your partner before you marry them. The reason for this is because you actually get to know them a lot better than you would just by casually dating, going out and hanging out. When you live with someone, you get to know all of the ins and outs of their mannerisms, how they clean, how they organize, if they're clean or organized at all. The things that they were taught and how they were taught to do them versus how we were taught to do them, and balancing those and compromising between everything. It's a totally different level of the relationship that you reach. And I think it's really important to reach that before you fully commit to someone.
Yeah, I think I personally agree with that. Obviously, I grew up in a very religious household, so my siblings did not feel the same way about that. And I did ask you listeners on my Instagram story at Darian Diaries if you want to participate in future upcoming polls. And I was kind of not surprised by the outcomes. But 90% of people said, yes, for sure, you should live with your partner before getting married. And then 10% said no, absolutely not. And some of the people that were the absolutely no, and even some of the yes for sure, like DM'd me and were like, this is only if I'm engaged would I do this. So people are different. But also, I think that times have changed. Less people are getting married. And one of the reasons I've lived with my partners is because I can't afford to live alone. Like in this economy, be effing for real. Like, if I could have my own apartment, I would love it. I'd have this girly little paradise palace, but I can't afford it. So here we are.
Yeah, it is exactly the same with owning a house. My partner and I were lucky enough to get in before the interest rates increased, like 2 years ago, December. So we got a really low interest rate of 2.99, which is unheard of nowadays.
Yeah, I don't even
But
know anything about interest rates, but I think that's, you said 2.99,
yeah,
2.99%. Yeah, so that's like under any percentage of any of my current loans. I'm pretty sure my student loans are like 4.5% and my car's like 5.5. So that's stellar.
yeah. And even with it being that low, there's no way I could afford this house on my own. I need my partner's income to be able to afford to live here. So that's definitely a huge factor.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to living together, obviously, one thing you have to do is establish some healthy living environment or boundaries or what have you. So, how do you personally maintain a healthy balance between your personal space and your shared living space in your relationship?
So, quite early on into living together, we realized that we cannot share every single piece of the house together. As much as we love each other and care about each other, it is super important to have your own spaces. So, for example, my partner has his own separate gaming room. So, he has all of his games in there, like all of his stuff in there. And then I have my own separate office. So, I have like a desk, a chair, like all my thrifting stuff in there. Um, and that's so important because, again, as much as you love your partner, if you're with someone 24/7, 7 days a week, like that's a lot. You need space apart. So that we learned that very early on because we started off by trying to like share every space together and it led to some bickering. So,
No, definitely. The bickering is so real. As you guys can tell, me and Michael do and do not share all of our spaces. We do have two bathrooms, but as the girl that's cleaning all the time, we share one bathroom because I don't want to be cleaning two bathrooms all the time. Call me lazy. It's fine. And then this is like my podcasting studio. But if you're watching us on video, you can see it is also Michael's like recording studio. So he has his gaming stuff here and his guitars. So this room is typically his space unless I'm recording for my podcast, then I kick him out. But that's how we share the space because I was like, there is no way. This is our second bedroom because we have two bedrooms. I was like, there's no way I can move into a one bedroom because I need that personal space. And I think it's super healthy for that.
yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
So you were talking a little bit about bickering, and I know me and Michael bickered a lot. So what would you say are some common challenges that couples face that maybe you face when moving in together?
So as I mentioned earlier, like I was raised to do certain things a certain way and he was raised to do certain things his own way. That is kind of what spearheaded a lot of the bickering. So like I fold towels just by folding in half, folding in half, folding in half. He
Mm,
folds them by like folding in half, then doing thirds, which results I
he's
know.
that's so fancy.
I know, which resulted in like again, it's little stuff when you move in with someone, but it resulted in like the cabinet that we put our towels in looking a little wonky with some towels being like shorter and higher stacked from the thirds, and then some of them being like flatter and wider. So I actually adapted the folding it in thirds last because
Mm.
it actually allows us to fit more towels in our cabinet closet. So but
No,
yeah,
that's
like
awesome.
just little things like that.
Definitely. I think cleaning and chore responsibilities are probably some of the the only fights me and Michael really have, but I feel like that's like the biggest thing when you move in with a partner because everyone, like you said, has different standards. And like for me, Michael shaves and he's like, I'll just leave the hair on the sink. And I'm like disgusted. And so he cleans it up, but he'll clean it up and there will still be like 10 to 15 hairs. And I'm like, no, that's still too dirty for me. Like, I feel like ever since having my own space, I feel so bad for my mom because I didn't help her clean as much as I should have. But now that like I have my own space, I'm like a, a clean police. Like, put your clothes away, put your shoes in the cubby, and get on with it.
Yes. So the thing with the shaving, definitely another thing. Yeah, because it was funny. I actually like sent a Snapchat to my partner one day. I came home and in the mornings you're rushing sometimes and like the
Hmm.
sink was just filled with like his like beard and mustache hairs. I took a Snapchat and I was like, "Hey babe, did you forget to do something this morning?" Like I
The
think you forgot to
pettiness
clean
is
something up.
real. Me. So funny. Whenever I'm home, I make the bed every single day. I do the dishes every single night before bed. Little things like that that help me stay sane, because if I don't do a little chore every day, I freak out. And so when I went home for the holidays, I came back and Michael left a day after me, so the bed wasn't made, dishes in the sink, smelled like something died in the fridge because he didn't throw out the old food. And I sent pictures. I'm like, ooh, look at this. I think a tornado came through our apartment. But this kind of leads to like the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is like, how do you handle disagreements and how do you go about, dividing chores? And do we have any advice for couples that might be dealing with these things and how they can help better communicate with their partner? And so for me, this is something that took me and Michael honestly probably 5 to 6 months living together to figure out like the chore cadence and what's okay for us, because it is so difficult. And we were bickering so much, like bickering to the point where we were almost about to break up, because I was like, this is not cool. And then we sat down and we thought about it and we reflected on everything we had had an argument about. So I think if this is an issue you guys are dealing with, definitely try the same thing. We like wrote it down. Every single issue was what we called a roommate issue. Were we happy with each other? Yes. Did we have any issues in like our beliefs? No. Did we have any issues with anything? No. Everything was roommate issues. And roommate issues should not lead you to breaking up. If you're living together and cohabitating, is that a word?
I think so. That sounds
Cohabitating?
about right.
Cohabitation. You know what? Y'all just ignore me. I got a master's degree, but still I cannot speak. Anyways, like we realized that all of the issues were just stemming from chores and stuff, because it makes me anxious, which then makes me be petty and send the pictures or whatnot. And so we just, kind of had to come to an agreement, and we ended up being able to work it out. But have you experienced anything similar with Brandon? And how did you guys kind of overcome the issue?
Oh yeah, we definitely experienced similar things. Um, we overcame it just by communicating and talking to each other. Like, hey, just so you know, I hate doing laundry. Do you? For him, it was like, no, I don't mind like throwing it in and switching it. He's like, but I hate doing dishes. Do you? And I was like, no, I'm
Mm-hmm.
cool with dishes. Like, so just kind of figuring out, because everyone has those certain chores where like they love it. Well, not love it, but they like tolerate
Yeah.
it. And then the chores that they hate. So we just kind of figured out what those chores were for each other. And if he really didn't like doing one of them, but I was like cool with it, then I would be the one to do them. So like I'm mainly the one who does the dishes, and he's mainly the one who like throws the laundry in and switches it, and I'll fold it. He'll carry the laundry up and down, but like I'll fold it, you know.
Yeah. And I think that's different too than like what a lot of us may have grown up with, because I grew up in a household where my mom was doing all of the cooking, pretty much all of the cleaning. And I knew that that was something that I did not want in my relationship. And honestly, I do want to be a stay-at-home wife one day, maybe if the cards are in my favor. And in that situation, I'd be happy to do that, because once you become an adult, once you're in your 20s, you do not realize how much goes into maintaining a home, the cooking, the cleaning. Doing all of it is exhausting, especially on top of a full time job. So I totally get if one of either whoever, if your partner's staying at home, if you're staying at home, having them pick up a little bit of the slack. Um, but just like Kelsey said, communicating, I think, is so essential for that.
Yeah, and then I'm a teacher, so I have like 3 months off in the summer. So during the summer, I normally pick up a majority of the chores, because why would I just sit around doing nothing all day and then once my partner comes home, make him do stuff? Like that doesn't really make sense to honestly me or him. So yeah, like you said, like in the summer, I'm normally the one who picks up more of the slack with the chores and stuff, but it makes sense.
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
yeah, and like living with someone is all about a give and a take. Like sometimes you might be having a bad week. So if you don't get to the chores that you normally do, hopefully your partner will kind of like step in for you. Or like say your partner's having a bad week. Normally you'll kind of step in for them. Um So yeah, living with someone's all a give and take. I always try not to make it so like concrete because I don't think relationships ever are.
No, definitely. And you gave the suggestion of, oh, we talked about it and we realized that there was different chores we liked and didn't like. If you listeners do not like the same chores as your partner, you can do a strategy of just like switching. So, like for a week, you do that chore, the next week they do it, or even like this month, I do this chore, this month, you do that chore. And then if you do have the money, which I'm sure a lot of the 20 somethings are struggling out there, like me and Kels, but if you can hire someone to do it, more power to you. I'm sure people that hire someone to do their cooking and cleaning are fighting less than us out here in these sheets. Not in that way in these sheets. I just mean like changing the sheets.
Like I can't imagine coming home to a clean house every day. That sounds magical. Like, I wonder what that's like.
Honestly. But enough of that. Let's talk about some financial matters when living together. As I said, in this economy, it is so much easier to live with a roommate or a partner. And so I was curious how you split your finances in your relationship while living with your partner.
So I am someone who hates taking money from other people. I hate relying on people. But when you become an adult, you learn you have to, whether you like it or not. um, but the way that Brandon and I kind of figured out how to do it is we like lumped our two salaries. So we like added those together and then we figured out like what percentage of the total each of ours is, and then we scaled that down to like the payments and the bills and stuff. So our payment for our house, we got really lucky again, is like 1,400 a month. So he pays like, I think we agreed it was like kind of like 60 to 70% of that, and then I pay like the 30 to 40% of it. So we scale it down to like what we make, because in our brains that like made the most sense and made it the most fair and even.
No, definitely. I completely agree with that. I feel like a lot of people these days may do like 50-50, but for me and Michael, we split based on percentage because he makes a lot more money than me, like you.
Yeah.
And so like truly honestly with like my student loans and car payment, I don't even think I could afford to live here if I was paying half the rent, half the bills. So like I always do the grocery shopping because I enjoy grocery shopping and he hates it. And if he goes, he'd probably be getting some unhealthy food. So I'm bringing back all the veggies and fruit. But so like I just always pay for groceries, but because it evens out, he picks up more of the utilities than I do because I pay for the groceries and groceries can be pricey.
They are so pricey. It is crazy. But yeah, so Brandon and I actually, it took us a while to figure out like the scaling it to our percentages thing. We started off doing 50-50 because that's what like everyone talked about. But like we quickly realized that like I was really, really broke and he was fine. So we're like, okay, like we need to kind of change this so we can both still like live like a not stressed about money life, but still like kind of always in the back of your brain, you know? So we can still be both comfortable with our finances. So that's when we were like, oh, well, let's scale it to percentages. And ever since we did that, it's been like fine.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think that's awesome. I know some people may not have the luxury if they're just living with a roommate, but that is a benefit of living with your partner because most of the time your partner doesn't want to make you go broke. So that's definitely a huge benefit. Awesome. Not everything is about finances. So, next, we're going to get into maintaining individuality and romance while living with your partner. So, how can couples maintain a sense of independence while living together? So, like, what are some things you and Brandon have done to still feel independent other than, not sharing the same spaces?
We each have like our different hobbies. So he likes to game a lot. He has like a lot of coworkers where on Fridays he'll sometimes go out to like a local bar with them or something. And like me being a teacher, my only hobbies are grading. So
No, me and Kelsey were just talking about this when I saw her because I think this is something that me and Michael do really well. So I'm gonna steal the show here, Kels, if you don't mind.
please do, because I suck at this. Like, I need help. I'm here to listen to you on this part.
And I know you already listened to me off cam, so now you're just gonna listen to me on cam. Maybe if you hear it again, it will stick. Um,
Okay.
so I personally, one thing I've always been really good at is still being able to be independent from my partner. Not saying that other people are not good at that, but the way that I do it is exactly what Kelsey said, by having hobbies. Michael likes to guitar, as you can see. He likes his video games. And for me, I have so many hobbies because if I'm not doing something at all moments in the day, my brain is like I don't know. It's very very difficult for me to rest. So that is something I can definitely improve on. But some hobby ideas are like this podcast. So like if Michael can't play video games or guitar while I'm podcasting actually because it's in the same room, but like when he's playing video games, I'm sitting in the other room reading or watching TV or going out and exploring. I do a lot of content creation outside of the podcast. And so I go with my nifty tripod, so I don't really need him to be there. I can just do it myself. I even started a solo date series. So one of the suggestions I gave to Kelsey, if to be independent, is even just going to a coffee shop or like starting a new hobby like reading or writing or journaling or just getting out of the house so you still feel independent. You can hang out with your friends. There's just so many options. You can hang out with your friends. Kelsey is, as I mentioned before, a master thrifter. She loves to thrift and she's great at reselling it. So I will link all of her stuff down below because Kelsey is going to become an independence queen this year and revamp her thrifting account. So if you like vintage stuff, if you like cool finds, make sure you follow her on Instagram. And as I said, I'll link it down below in the show notes. But reflecting on things that I've said, Kels, do you have anything else to add?
Um, if you're like me and maybe you get too caught up in your work life and you kind of forget about like your personal life, definitely listen to Darian's recommendations because, new year, new me, right? um, like she said, I'm definitely going to start reselling more. I have a bunch of amazing stuff, but I haven't done anything with it because I've just felt so overwhelmed. So, first goal, resell, do what I like, right? I'm good at it, so why don't I do it? um,
Exactly. And it
yeah.
helps you feel like you don't have to spend all your time with your partner because it does get draining like when you're just with your partner all the time. And it's great that you want to be with your partner, listeners, but it's also great to find joy in your independence and in you and in your solo hobbies. Back to you, Kels.
Um, and yeah, like another thing, I love like local shops and stuff. That's kind of part of like my thrifty niche, right? I like individual things. I don't really like a bunch of different chains. So I'm definitely going to try to start exploring different coffee shops that are around me. There's not many in the city that I live in, but there are like in nearby cities. So I need to like get it out of my head where it's like, oh, it's 15 minutes away. Okay, 15 minutes is nothing. Like, go to
So
that coffee
in
shop.
literally in Connecticut, everything is so far. Nothing is 15. Everything's an hour away, I swear.
Oh
15 minutes
man.
is a dream.
Yeah. Um, and don't be scared to try new stuff. Like that's something that holds me back and I know this about myself. But
Mhm.
don't be scared to do something new where it might make you a little bit uncomfortable. That's good. That means you're growing. You're doing something different. You're changing. You're not being stagnant.
Definitely. I love that. Well, thank you for sharing and thank you for being vulnerable and open. I appreciate that. What are some creative ways to keep the romance alive in your day-to-day life when you're sharing the same space?
So, some ways that I've discovered that are helpful is just telling them that you love them, even if you're just kind of like relaxing and watching a movie together. Because watching a movie could be like a roommate thing,
Mm-hmm.
But if you just like look at them during like, I don't know, part of the movie where it relates to you and your partner, just, you know, tell them you love them or something, give them a little kiss on the cheek. Um, just little stuff like that. If their smile or the way that they're laughing makes you happy, tell them that.
Yeah.
It's little things that you kind of have to remember about someone, right? Because even if you're with someone for a long time, you still may be like a little self-conscious about yourself. So don't forget to compliment your partner throughout the day.
Definitely.
Like during the holidays, like Brandon was looking really nice. And I told him, you know, guys deserve to hear compliments too. Or whoever your partner is, like they deserve to hear compliments all the time. So that's something that can kind of help you not fall into that roommate stage. Um, Another thing is just doing stuff together, like cooking together. That's may sound like weird, but when you cook with someone, it's actually really fun. um, like we have been making a lot of like homemade pizzas lately.
I love
With
pizza.
pizza's so good.
Pizza's so good.
um,
ASMR, we love pizza.
but like I don't know, it's really fun because like you take on different roles. Like he'll do the cheese and pepperoni, or I'll spread the sauce or whatever. Like we'll shape it, and it's nice to do something with them.
No, that's really sweet. So, what I got from what you're saying is kind of like understanding the love languages of your partner and making sure you're playing on that. So if you know their love language is touch, you can give them little kisses. If you know that their love language is words of affirmation, making sure you're complimenting them. If you know that it's quality time or acts of service, helping out with the dishes when it's not their chore, or, you know, making food with them. That's really beautiful. Just to add to that, one thing that me and Michael do is every week since we started dating, we have set aside a night to be date night. So we say, this is date night. So even if we're just doing something we do every day, it's date night. Like tonight, after I finish the podcast, it is date night. So we're getting Chipotle and we're going to sit down and watch a movie. Now, that could be a roommate thing. It could just be something you do every single day. But because we're saying this is date night, we'll light a candle, we'll make it special, and we'll go into the evening with the mindset that we're there to be present with one another. So I think that's something you could try. So whether it's a date night in or a date night out, just saying once a week we are having a date night. If you are in your 20s or 30s and have kids, have a date night with your kids there. If you can't afford a babysitter, get a babysitter just to make sure you're making time and setting aside special time outside of just living together. Because if you don't say this is date night, you might just be like, all we do is watch movies all the time. Not romantic, but you can make it romantic.
And that's something that I kind of want to start taking on this year. So my partner and I, we always do stuff like that, but we never like you said, like label it. And you go
Yeah.
into a different mindset when you have something labeled, right? You get in that mindset, in that groove. So I really love that you do that.
Yeah. And even sometimes it's like, if I know it's going to be date night, instead of wearing, you know, my normal baggy clothes, I'll put on comfy leggings and a sweater so I look a little nicer. You know, but just by labeling it and reframing what you're already doing and how you're already living your life can make your like romance and your relationship so much more special. Awesome. The last question I have in the maintaining individuality and romance sector of this podcast episode is, how do you navigate alone time and socializing with friends when living with a partner? So I feel like we kind of touched on both of these. So why don't we just skip past this? But basically, make sure you're hanging out with your friends, make sure you're doing solo dates, enjoying your hobbies, and that's that. If you want us to go in depth any further, let us know in the comments, and we'll be happy to do so at another time.
Yeah, basically just don't lose yourself.
Okay, this one's awesome. So, how can couples support each other in pursuing individual goals while sharing a living space? So, like, Brandon knows that you want to get up and going on your hobbies. So, how would you feel supported in his response to, helping you with that? Or how do you support him in his gaming or whatever?
So that's a good question. Brandon is like super techie, like he works in IT. He's really good at stuff like that. So something he's actually already done for me, he's just waiting for me to use it and implement it, is he's actually made me a website. Um, yeah,
Kels, I didn't know that. That's so cool. For your thrifting?
yeah, he made me a website. Like the URL is like at nolandphilclothing.com.
Oh my gosh, that's so sweet.
Yeah. He's just waiting for me to use it. But again, I've been stuck in a rut, but we're getting through that, right? New year, new me. I'm gonna thrift and everything now and sell it and stuff. But so that's definitely one way he supported me with that. He made me a website so I can actually like post my stuff on there, make it a little bit more formal. I could still use Instagram, but then I would connect like the link in the Instagram post so people could click on it and go to the actual website. It's just like a different avenue for people to shop to buy my thrifted stuff. So he's definitely supported me with that.
That
um,
is so, so sweet.
yeah, he's awesome. And with his gaming, so occasionally he'll get like random bursts where he'll want to go on Twitch and he wants to like gain followers and subscribers on Twitch. Because he did that in the past and he actually made a little bit of money from it, which is really cool. I
Sheesh.
I know.
I'm just gonna start streaming Michael. I'm just gonna like put up my camera and be like, "You're on Twitch now." I'm just
No,
kidding.
seriously, like Michael should start doing that stuff. But
He's
if
a
I know
little
that he's,
shy.
yeah, it's okay.
Camera shy. I'm not camera shy if y'all can't tell that by now. The camera loves me. This is my good side.
Well, all your sides are a good side. But if I know he's going live, I'll go on Twitch and I'll like share out his link to like all of my platforms and stuff. So like I'll go on Twitter and post it, I'll go on Instagram and post it. I'll even start like watching him and like commenting and stuff, even though like I'm right next to him or like in a different room in the house. Like
Yeah, even though you're living in the same space, you're still able to support him and, you know, what he's doing. That's really
yeah,
sweet.
yeah. Thanks. How about
No,
you? What do
that's
you and Michael do?
yeah, so I would say we do very similar things. I was very close to giving up on this podcast, as I've said before. I didn't hit the benchmarks I wanted to hit, which is fine because really, if I'm even helping one person at the end of the day, that means a lot to me. Even if it's just you, Kelsey, and you're on the episode. But for Christmas, Michael got me this brand new podcasting mic. As you guys can tell, it's a little different from some of my other ones because he knew how important it was for me to continue to grow with the podcast because I just expressed to him how much I love helping people and how much I love hearing other people's stories and advice. And my 20s have been so hard, which is why I started this podcast to begin with. But like for Michael, for me, I think it's just being present a lot. So he likes to play guitar. So when he learns something new, most of the time I'm like sitting in the other room, locked, like closing all the doors because I don't want to hear him play guitar 24/7. I know you think you want to date a guy or girl that like plays guitar all the time, but it does get annoying after a while. Love you, Michael. You are very amazing at guitar if you're listening. um, but like just being present when he wants to show me something. So if he's like, Darian, look at this cool thing I learned, like me listening, like sitting here and listening, I think just shows him, that I'm here for him and willing to support him and his goals. He wants to start a band, I think. So I'm really trying to help him with that. So I'm trying to push him to keep practicing, even if it disturbs my reading sometimes. It's okay. It is okay though, because we do share a space, but we don't share the same goals. We have our own individual. Well, we do have this relationship goals. I don't even know what I'm saying. We have our relationship goals, but we have our own individual goals. And sometimes you need to kind of give and take the space you're sharing in order to achieve those goals. So that's how we do it. It's just giving time or helping them, building a website for them. Brandon, do you want to build a website for me too?
He totally would. He totally would. It's like he loves doing stuff like that so much.
I'm totally kidding, but I love that. That's really sweet. So, next, I kind of want to get into talking about thinking about moving in because, yes, we've discussed some issues of moving in together. We discussed, some of the positive sides. I guess we could discuss more positive sides, but we've given a lot of solutions to problems. But before you even move in together, I do think there's some things you should reflect upon. So, what are some things couples should consider before they do decide to move in together?
I think a really important one is making sure that your relationship is in the right state to move in together. You don't want to move in
Definitely.
with someone just to fix a relationship.
Oh my gosh,
That's like
100%.
that's not how you do it. You want to be in like the best stage of your relationship possible before you move in. Like, don't move in to try to fix it. You move in because you're doing fantastic and you're flourishing and you want to take that next step. That's why you should want to move in. So make sure you're in like that right stage of your relationship before you do it.
Definitely. For me, I think that some things that should also be thought about is not only that, but do consider the finances, like we were saying. Consider if it would be better for you to move in together, or if maybe you should, be living at home or with another roommate, or consider the financial aspects for sure. I know that our friend Marissa, she does live with her partner, but they also have a roommate on top of that. So you could think about a situation like that too. I feel like that's more common nowadays in this economy. But also like thinking about what the like projection of your relationship. So just thinking about, before you move in, what does our life look like down the road? Like, we don't want to just jump into this and then, maybe you want to get married, they don't want to get married. And then, like, once you live with a partner, the move out process is horrific. Like, I went through it. It's heartbreaking. It takes a long time. Sometimes you have to live with them for a few weeks broken up. So just, you want to consider the positives and you want to consider worst case scenario. If you guys are to break up while living together, it's okay. You will survive. I did, surviving and thriving. But definitely just like take it into consideration.
Yeah, and I like that you brought up the financial aspect. So Brandon and I have been living together for like I don't even know, probably 7 or 8 years now. But we only recently like got our own space 2 years ago. So like those 5 or 6 years that we were still living together, some of those years I was living at his family's house. So in those years he was living at like my family's house because we were trying to save money up. Thankfully we had families who like didn't mind us like crashing for a
Yeah,
few.
that's wild. I could never, I love my family, but I could never do that. So I'm glad you guys did that and it worked out in your favor.
Yeah, thankfully, like we have really good family relationships with each other's families. So like it worked out because of that. But we did that to save up the money because we knew we weren't financially ready to like go out on our own, even though we really badly wanted to. So
Yeah,
finances
definitely.
is definitely a big thing.
No, absolutely. And I think there's so much more that I'm honestly just blanking on at this point. But like also take into just have conversations. Have the financial conversations, have conversations about cleaning, talk about chores before going in because oh my goodness. As I said before, if you are a girly pop listening to this and you've never lived with a non girly pop before, or even there's some girly pops that are dirty out there. So I'm not even going to say it's just girls, you know? If you're dating a girl, if you're a girl dating a girl, it doesn't matter. Have conversations about cleanliness levels, okay? That is it's just so important. I don't even know. I don't know what else to say. Just talk about it before you go in. I know me and Michael sat down and I was like, let's talk about this before I even consider moving in, because that should be the first step is the hard conversations. And you need to think about the other variables in your life. For example, I had a cat. I loved my cat. Michael, severely allergic to my cat. So when I moved in with him, I had to sacrifice my best bud. I had to give up my cat to live with him, but I had so much faith in Michael and my relationship that I knew it would be okay. And I still miss my cat, but he lives in a very happy home. He lives with my old roommate, so I hope he's still doing well. But just think about things of that sort. Like if your kids, think about how it would affect your kids. Or did I say if your kids? I meant if you have kids. I don't know what I said. If you have kids, think about your kids, think about how it would affect them. Everyone in their 20s is at such a different point. So, depending where you are in your 20s journey, there's going to be different things to think about. And you know what? Google it on the Google, on the internet if you need some discussion starters. I should have brought discussion starters to the table, but I will add some resources for you in the show notes so you guys do not have to go find them yourself. I'll add the resources in the show notes for some discussion starters for you to ponder before moving in with a partner.
I also do think that, kind of like you said a little bit ago, thinking about, okay, well, you move in, what comes after that? Like, do you both agree on what comes after that? Like, do you both want to get married? Do you both want to have kids? Because when you move in together, like, you're with that person. Like, you need to be on the same boat as to like what the next step would be after that. So that's, like you said, also super important. And if you're moving in with someone and you have children, please make sure they're also good for your children. Okay. Like that is, I've heard some horror stories. I'm a teacher, so I teach high schoolers. I've had some high schoolers tell me horror stories about like the partners that their parents have moved in with, and the parent was in love with the partner, but the partner wasn't good for the kid. Always make sure the person you bring into your household is also good for your child.
Definitely. I feel like that could be a whole nother topic, but since we're talking about living with your partner, it's definitely something that had to be said.
Yeah.
And like while we're also talking about the decision making aspect, and you were talking about like, I don't know, things that you might not agree upon, is there any like signs or red flags or challenges that you think people should kind of look out for when they're having these discussions? Like, if this is here, we shouldn't move in together.
If your partner is showing absolutely no signs of compromising,
Oh my God, that's
huge,
such a good one.
huge red flag, because living with someone, and honestly just being in a relationship in general, but especially living with someone, comes with constant compromises almost daily. You don't even really think about
Definitely.
them that much. But like if your partner in these like pre moving in, or even if you're moved in and you're starting to talk about it, but you should talk about it before you do. If they're showing signs that they don't compromise on anything or they're not willing at all, I would maybe rethink moving in with them and possibly rethink the whole relationship.
Definitely. Definitely. We're not even going to open that can of worms completely, but that is so important because, as you guys know, I moved to Connecticut and I'm fine being here. I'm happy. I found my friends. I'm enjoying life now. But I did tell Michael that it was a deal breaker for me if we stayed in Connecticut and had a family here because we are far from both of our families. So I'm not sure where I'll be 5 years from now because I'm hoping maybe in 5 years from now we'll be able to have some kids. But I let him know, like from the jump, I'm happy to move here. I'm happy to uproot my life in Indiana now to move to Connecticut and like to start our journey and our family and our living together. But I had to be thinking ahead because I'm like, if he wants to live in Connecticut forever, I'm potentially screwed. And then I'm just going to have to go through a whole nother breakup and move back in with my parents or something. So for the time being, we're going to be in Connecticut and my feelings could change. You know, I've still only been here less than a year, but if Michael would have been like, yeah, no, I want to be in Connecticut, red flag. That's not compromise. I picked up my life for you and you're not willing to, you know, move closer to one of our families. But luckily, we're in the same boat. So we're going to keep on rowing
Yeah. Yeah,
in
luckily you
that
found a good
boat.
one, so. But yeah, I feel like that's like the biggest thing.
Is there any other ones you can think of?
Maybe if they're like super controlling. if you're talking to them
Mhm.
about stuff. Like if they're not willing to release some of the things they grew up doing, that might be a red flag. Because living with someone is all about like sharing, give and takes, like sometimes having to take over what they're doing and vice versa. I don't know, like unwilling to give stuff up.
Definitely, which I guess like pretty much anything that you can think of when you're having these discussions does relate back to compromise. Are you willing to come to a decision together, or are you willing to give up some things? So like if you decide you can't really do like a 50-50 break, are you okay? Like me, it's not like I could have my cat sometimes. Like I had to give him up. It wasn't an option, but I was comfortable with that option because we talked about it. So really, this all relates back to communication, communicating boundaries, and communicating, your financial needs, wants, and your future goals and where you want to be later on.
Yeah. And like having the capacity to understand what the other person is saying and where they're coming from.
So next, we're going to switch gears here, and our next theme to talk about is emotional well-being and intimacy. So, how can couples ensure they're contributing equally to the emotional well-being of their part of the relationship while living together? So, I know I've struggled with mental health. I know you've struggled with mental health, and we've kind of talked about that give and take sort of deal, but can you go a little bit more in depth to talk about support of your partner's well-being while living together?
Absolutely. So I've struggled with my mental health for years, like ever since I was in high school, it's been a thing. Um, so since I've been with my partner for so long, it's not something new to him. Like he's known I've dealt with it, he knows it's been an issue. But I'm super open and honest with him about it and when it's affecting me. Um, and on some of the days where I may struggle to communicate that, he knows me well enough to know that I'm struggling. um, but he's been like super great about it. So again, I'll communicate that I'm struggling. Like for me, I have depression and anxiety already, but then I get seasonal affective disorder as like the winter comes. My partner knows this. Um, so he'll ask me, he's like, "What can I do to help you? Like, what can I do?" And I'll tell him like honestly, just love me. Like because when you're
Easier
struggling,
said than done.
I
I'm not
know, but
saying it's hard to love you. I'm not saying it's hard to love you. I'm just saying, like,
when
it
you're
does look
struggling,
different. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because when you're struggling, like you think you're hard to love. Like I don't know, you think a lot of stupid things that your brain convinces you of. So just having a partner who's there to love you even when you may not feel the most lovable is super important. Like hugs are a really big thing for me. Like if I'm having a bad day, I'll just like stand there and hug him for like ever. And he'll try to let go. I'm like, no, no, no. I still need some hugs. Like and he knows that like chocolate and sweets and sugar like make me really happy. So something he'll do, I don't know if you guys know what Handles is, but it's a really amazing ice
Ice
cream
cream.
place.
What
Yeah,
are
it's
you
an ice
eating?
cream.
I'm eating ice cream.
Yeah. That we have here. I think it's local. I don't think it's across the US, right?
I think it might be in a few states, but I'm not quite sure.
Okay. Okay. Well, if you're lucky enough to have a Handles by you, um, my partner will sometimes go there and like get me some ice cream, like on his way home from work if he knows that I've had a really bad day or if like I'm really struggling a lot. Like he'll just come home and be like, "Surprise! I got you your favorite ice cream." And like little things like that mean a lot to me. Um, because it just shows that he's still trying to help me be happy. He's doing stuff he knows like that I enjoy. Like I enjoy sweets and he'll remember like the certain kind of ice cream I get. Like that little stuff like that means a lot.
That
You
is
know?
so sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that a lot of that stuff that you're mentioning is stuff that people should already be learning in your relationship. So that kind of stuff doesn't change when you move in together. You have
No.
to, be kind. You need to communicate your feelings. Um, and when I asked you the question, it talks about contributing equally, but I don't really think it's ever 100% equal. It's give and take, like we said. And I personally, we can talk about this in a different relationship episode. But I don't think that you should be putting like all of, you know, your burdens on your partner either just because you do live together and it's so easy to go home and vent, or it's so easy to go home and lock yourself into a room. You need to take into consideration they're a person with feelings and struggles themselves. And that's why therapy is so beautiful, because you can talk about your struggles with a therapist and then still be able to, like live in the space and respect them and respect their boundaries and make sure they're not getting drained out um, as well. So I think that, therapy is a really beautiful thing if you're struggling with your well being and you want to make sure you're not just putting everything on your partner. When it also comes to well being, living with a partner, Michael did not realize how much I cried. Because when we were dating, I did not text him every time I was crying. And when you live together, there's nowhere to hide. The tears, there's nowhere to hide.
The anger, the happiness, the sadness, the frustration, like,
Yeah, they're all tears. A
and
lot
your
of
partner,
mine, yeah.
yeah, they will see every inch of you. So if you're not comfortable with that yet, don't move in with them yet. Like,
That's something to reflect upon too. But also, once again, like emotional well being in a relationship is just something that you need to discuss. You need to communicate, because I would come home and cry after work and Michael would think he did something wrong, and I like wouldn't want to talk to him because I'm crying obviously and cranky, but it was never him. It was just that I was stressed and feeling overwhelmed from my long commute to work. And so that was putting strain on our relationship because we were living together and he was seeing that. And I was just upset all the time from work and putting that on him because we're living in the same space. Whereas when we weren't living together, I could just go home at the end of the day and decompress by myself in my bed, put on some headphones and cry to my sad music in my peace. But now, after I communicated that to him, or even if I am crying, I like make sure to tell him, you didn't do anything. This is just me. I just need to feel. So I don't know if that was helpful at all, but just know that it's okay to cry, but you need to communicate to your partner that they're not the reason you're crying if they're not the reason you're crying.
yeah, no, that is definitely a big thing. Like something Brandon and I do is when we come home from work, well, sometimes we'll actually like have a phone call while we're both driving home because we both get off around the same time. So he'll normally call me. We'll just kind of like vent to each other about our work day.
On the
And that's
drive
actually,
home.
yeah, and that's
So then
actually
by the
really,
time you get home, you're like all good. That is very clever.
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't
Yeah.
mean to cut you off.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. I love that you were like thinking through that. Yeah. But no, it's super helpful because, you just get off work. You both know you're venting about work because you just got off of it and you're like talking to each other about it. And sometimes like you can end the conversation there and you get home and you can just kind of like decompress. Sometimes like it was a really rough day and you just continue it at home. But it's nice to kind of like immediately get that out of the way. That way you can like chill out afterwards and just like enjoy your time with your partner. Because work is rough. Okay, I don't think any of us in our 20s were prepared for like how straining work is. Like, I know like Darian and I, we've talked about this quite a bit. Like, we had no idea how hard it was to like work full time as an adult. And I don't want that to make it sound like we're soft people. Like, we're not soft, but like, it's rough. And no one tells you or prepares you for that. So
No.
it's important to like let your like vent to your partner about work because they're probably going through the same thing. But if it gets into like deeper things, like I don't know, psychological things that your partner probably isn't trained to handle, that's when you should like seek out therapy. So like personally for me, this year has been like pretty rough. Again, I'm a teacher. If you know, you know. It's rough out here. So I personally started therapy because I was dealing with stuff that like Brandon doesn't know how to deal with that stuff. Why would I try to put that on him? That's not fair. Um, so yeah, I definitely agree. Like going to therapy when you feel like it's getting a little bit much for your partner is super important. Not that your partner isn't going to try to help you, but at that point, they don't know how. Like they're just a human, you know? And I'm just a human. Like we don't know how to deal with that kind of stuff.
No, definitely. And I think like another way that Michael is really, really good about, protecting his own well being as well as mine is he'll send me a text if he's having a bad day. And he might send me a text and be like, hey, when I get home, I need to have a me day. Or like, hey, I had a bad day. I'm not going to really want to talk when I get home. So I know it's nothing personal. And he's just trying to be mindful of me. And I try to do this sometimes too. If you do want to go the route of talking about it and venting, because I think that can be a really great thing. Um, but like just asking a partner, like, do you have the mental capacity today for me to vent? And if they say
Yeah.
yes, then great, go on. And if they say not today, I had a really rough day and I don't think I want to talk about it today, then you guys can, you know, talk to your therapist, talk to your friends, talk to your grandma, talk to whoever, and you can and recycle that up. Um, we kind of have touched on this, but I just wanted to see if you had anything else to add on how you manage stress and avoid conflict with external pressures like work, family, issues, etc., while living with your partner because we're trying to keep it out of the house, but sometimes it little sneaks its way in.
Yeah. Um so I don't know, I guess just like again being open and honest about what you're venting to them about. Um because like you kind of like elaborated on, if you come home upset and you don't tell your partner why you're upset, they're going to think it's them. So like if your family member messaged you something that wasn't the best and you come home upset, you don't have to immediately tell your partner that, but like when you're ready, be like, hey, just so you know, like I'm pretty upset, like this happened, and this person said this, and it's really upsetting because they're my family. You know, everyone doesn't have perfect families, so I'm sure they'll understand and be able to relate to you and help you and understand it with you. Um, I don't have a perfect family by any means. I love them, but we're not perfect. So again, since I've been with my partner for so long, he knows this about my family, and he's normally there to like understand and support me whenever like anything happens. Um, I normally try not to involve him in the issue though. I normally try to keep him out of all family issues. I normally just vent to him about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think a big thing is like keeping your partner out of the family problems. I don't know, until they're your family, right? Until you marry them or whatever.
Yeah.
But if they're like just your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, they don't need to be involved yet. You can just vent to them about what it's like to be in the family, right? Don't bring it into their lives yet, if that makes
Definitely.
sense.
It does make sense. And I think if you listeners take anything away from this podcast today, it's that compromise and communication are the key to living with your partner. So I have just one last question for you today, and that is, what advice do you have for couples dealing with different sleep schedules or bedtime routines?
um, so Brandon and I normally go to bed at the same time, but that's because we have relatively similar work schedules.
Oh my gosh. Okay, then I'm gonna take away this question because I'm little granny over here with a walker and Michael's staying up late like he's still in college. Um, so my advice to you, this is what me and Michael do. Every night, Michael cuddles me to bed and puts on a movie for me to fall asleep to. As soon as I fall asleep, he turns off the movie, he does his thing, and then he comes back. That way, I can still get that feeling that we're falling asleep together, but then he doesn't have to stay there with his arm half asleep and his mind wandering. So that's one thing. Honestly, I think this is becoming more common, but if you have different sleep schedules, I find nothing wrong with having two beds in your apartment and sleeping in different rooms. I do not think you have to sleep in the same bed as your partner for there to be romance and intimacy. I do think you can have your own space and that own space can have its bed in it if your sleep schedules are messed up because sleep is so important and you don't want your partner waking you up every night. Do you have anything else to add on that since you guys get to fall asleep at the same time like a perfect little pair that you are?
I will say though, like whenever we're on break, so we both have like I'm a teacher and he thankfully has like really flexible work
That's
schedules.
nice.
So yeah, if I'm on break, he'll normally try to take off to be on break with me. We
Hmm.
do end up like turning into high schoolers with our with our sleep schedules. But yeah, I don't know. We during the work week, we both normally are like really tired between 9 and 10 and we go to bed. He does sometimes like struggle staying asleep though. So
Mm.
like some people need complete quiet to sleep. That's not me. I can sleep in any situation.
You
um
lucky little duck.
yeah. Sleep is really nice for me. I enjoy it a lot. Um
Same.
But because of that, like sometimes he'll need something to fall asleep to. So like he'll put on a show or something. So like he'll go to bed with me, but he might stay up for like another hour or two, like on his phone or like watching something. Um Again, thankfully I don't need complete quiet, so that's cool with me. But if you're someone
Hmm.
who might need complete quiet and you have a partner who like may go to bed at the same time as you but not fall asleep yet, that's probably where a separate bedroom would be helpful.
Definitely. But
Yeah.
thank you so much for all your responses. Before we get going today, Kelsey, this is something I'm asking everyone that comes on my podcast now. What is your number one piece of advice that you would want to tell a 20 something? So it doesn't have to be pertaining to this topic, but what do you want to leave the listeners with today?
Don't expect perfection. I think that's a really big thing. When we're in high school, when we're young, we think like, oh, once I graduate and get into the real world, once I become an adult, like my life's gonna be perfect. I'm gonna know what to do. Like, I get to do stuff on my own. Like, this is how my life's gonna be. Don't expect that because if you expect that, you're gonna be disappointed.
Hmm.
20s are wild. You're learning, you're growing, you're trying to be independent while also like finding like relationships and stuff. Just kind of like relax and learn to go with the flow, go with what life throws at you. Because there's a lot of life that's being thrown at you in your 20s.
Definitely a lot of life on this roller coaster ride that we are calling our 20s.
Yeah. So, like, don't expect perfection in your 20s. Like, that's not what the 20s are for.
Definitely. I don't think any of us are perfect. And you know what? It takes really strong women to know that. We know the world does not revolve around us, and
No.
that's okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you so, so much for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And if you're watching, hey. Thank you so much for being here today. If you enjoy the show, make sure to follow us wherever you're getting podcasts, like, subscribe, listen, all that fun jazz. Make sure to share this with your partner if you're thinking about moving in together. Share it with a friend that might be wanting to move in with their partner. As always, you can follow me at Darien Diaries on TikTok and Instagram to connect further with the podcast community, suggest show topic suggestions, suggest topics, and for more tips on surviving and thriving in your 20s. Thanks again for listening. I'm Darian Alexis, and don't forget to survive and thrive.